The Gilded Age Season 2. The whole thing is over, but we are just getting started here on Post Show Recaps. I'm Marissa Garza, and joining me in my podcast box is the one and only Jason Reed. Jason, so glad you could make it. All the papers said you were going to be at the other podcast house.
Yeah, but I think I might have made the wrong decision. It's pretty empty around here. I wonder if it's too late for me to go to that other podcast.
I think you can make it.
That would definitely be me though. I would because whenever I'm presented with those choices, I always make the wrong choice. Like the thing's gonna be here, or the thing is gonna go this way, and I always make the wrong choice. I always end up being the person in the empty seat in the empty theater, like in the empty auditorium. Like, oh, I should have gone to the other show.
But you
so I can relate.
You get
Well, I can put my feet up. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I got room.
Yeah. I am like that with like TV shows. Like people will see a trailer and they'll be like, this could be so good. I'm like, I don't know. And then it is like really, really good. So like anytime I'm like, I don't know, I'm like, oh, it's probably going to be pretty good.
Yeah, and then you got to binge it, a year later, because you can't jump on the bandwagon mid-season because you look like a chump.
Pride. Yeah.
So you gotta like come on the bandwagon later. Like,
yeah, exactly. Well, welcome everyone to the final. We don't know. There has been no season 3 announcement, so for the time being,
Marissa, you better not have got me into a show and then leave me hanging like this.
I know,
because there's so many things we need to see next season. We better get a season 3. I'm holding you personally responsible if we don't get a season 3. So
or at least a movie. Like we need some closure on some things.
I can't see why not. I think the show probably did well enough that it's ripe for a season 3.
Yeah, enough people were talking about it. That's for sure. We did our fair.
I need to see Larry and babies. I need to see Ada ruling the house with an iron fist.
Oh yeah. I need to see Agnes being uncomfortable. There's so many things. So many things.
I need all that. Yeah.
Well, we did our fair share of talking about the season, and I hope others joined in on the fun. If you missed any of it, you can find our other conversations at postshowrecaps.com/gildedage/HBO in the main feed. If you're a patron of Post Show Recaps, you get ad-free versions of these podcasts. And you can also check out where Jason's at every single time on YouTube. He's in a different location every podcast. So we love when you stop by and say hi to us there as well. Thank you. It's been really fun having people join us on YouTube this season. So thanks so much for joining in.
Yeah, today I'm obviously in the academy because I'm the only one in the audience and not the men.
Well, Jason, you know how I like to do. I like to start us off with a quick plot recap.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know about you. It was hard. I sat down I gave it a good college try, and I could not put together paragraphs about this episode because it was all over the place.
Yes, very many intersections, a lot of quick cuts in between stories, and we were going all over the place this episode. So yeah, I don't blame you for not being able to really put it in one cohesive package there.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know. We're going left, we're going right, we're going up, we're going down. So what I did do is kind of group some things together, and we can just talk through our impressions of these main points that get interrupted by other main points. Yes. Well, I think we should start with there's no point in burying the lead. Like, this was an opera war episode. This was the culmination of all of Bertha's hard work, everything that she had fought for all season. And it starts off with a bang. We learn the Duke has been stolen.
Yeah, we were talking the whole season about these little battles of the opera war kind of in the background for a lot of the season. And now we finally get the whole war itself, because like you said, the whole episode was pretty much based around the opera war. And I would say the war itself did disappoint. We got pretty much the whole episode about it. So let's get into who the winners, the losers, people that came out neutral. Let's go through it all.
Well, it starts off with Bertha thinking she might have lost because she gets that note. She says, oh, the Duke who's supposed to be coming to you, the Met, is actually going to be at the Academy. Mrs. Astor stole the Duke for me, and she scrambles and tries to find like how she can win him back, and she finds out that it was Mr. McAllister that actually brokered the deal between them, and this does not sit well with Bertha. She wants to go like throw as much money at the problem as she can and get the Duke back on his side. And George, to his credit, again, superstar supporter here, is like, no, you don't need to do that. Stand on your own 2 feet.
Well, I love when, you know, she gets the letter that tells her the Duke's not coming or the Duke's been stolen. She marches down to George's office, and George's like, well, I mean, didn't you technically steal the Duke yourself from Mrs. Winterton? I just love Bertha just like draping off Mrs. Winterton, like, please. She drapes herself with her husband's money. She was pressing my clothes a year ago, okay? F Mrs. Winterton. That's nothing. But then George, he's like, yeah, you know, we're not throwing any more money at this. We're throwing enough money at it. More money than even Bertha knows, really.
Yeah, really.
But yeah, he does tell her, listen, you have done the work. You've put in the work. You don't need this, you know, ne'er-do-well Duke, who we've been talking about the Duke all season, which is like, what is the Duke doing? Why is the Duke being able to be bought? But I mean, apparently, listen, news to me, knowledge for me, just because you got the title of a Duke doesn't mean you have money. Doesn't mean you're rich. So that was news to me. So yeah, but like you said, I do love George kind of backing his wife's play. Like, listen, you don't need the stupid Duke. You've done enough work to make this your own, to claim victory here.
Yes. When he says that later in the episode, I was like, swoon. I was like, yes, okay, I will go. I will. Like, I'm walking in this myself. Anywho, I also did love in that conversation earlier in the episode where Bertha and says that, you know, to George that the Duke was stolen. She's like, well, we must trumpet it louder. And he's like, well, that makes me nervous. I'm like, I'm sure it does, George. I'm sure it does. So we have all this back and forth. Bertha ends up trying to go make a deal with the Duke. Let's talk about this deal that she like goes to the hotel, which in this time, like, we didn't have TMZ. We didn't have like Twitter. No one could take a picture of her, but people still had eyes and they could see a woman of her status going to the hotel room of a Duke. So it was a bit of a risk.
And apparently she was slumming it because he was in like 30 something street, and it was like, I can't believe I'm debasing myself by coming down here, which like is basically like the Motel 6 of today's time. You know, even though he does have like a butler and everything, he's still so poor he has to slum it down in 30 whatever street.
We don't get to see the details of what this is, but we get to see the outcome of this deal, which we'll talk about him arriving and all that stuff later. But what do you think Bertha went in with? What do you think she put on the table?
I mean,
was it just Gladys?
I mean, I'm sure it was Gladys, some money, maybe a stake in George's company, some interest like that to, you know, ensure yourself wealth and you get yourself a wife. But it could have just been Gladys, and that's that. Who knows? That
is wild to me. Is that enough
Super
for like,
wild.
you're like,
here's my daughter. Will you come to the opera? Like, what? How is that a fair deal? Come to one night of opera and you can have my daughter.
Yeah, like, but apparently,
but maybe there was something other than just one night of opera. Like, you will come to I will be your guide into the social life of, you know, New York. You are not to go anywhere near Mrs. Astor, Mrs. Turnerton. You are mine. I'm giving you my daughter, so you're mine now. Maybe that was the deal.
Maybe. I mean, I was looking this up. This is not going to be a very historically in-depth episode because, again, we are all over the place. But apparently there was the thing called the American Dollar Princesses. And these were American women that married into titled European families for the exchange of wealth. So it could have been, but this is like a reverse situation because in the American Dollar Princess scenario, it's the titled European family that has the money that the American woman would be inheriting by marrying in. But this way it's a little bit tilted on its head. But if you're into the American Dollar Princesses, another show being covered here on Post Show Recaps called The Buccaneers goes through that type of storyline. There's a number of American Dollar Princesses on that show around the same time as well.
Well, I mean, listen, this is similar to an arranged marriage, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're trading status and money for, a mutually beneficial arrangement to marry off this daughter. It feels very icky in this instance because it seems that Gladys isn't being told that this is a
No,
thing.
Gladys is all like, "Oh my gosh, Billy's coming. Billy's coming to the opera. I'm gonna wave
Gladys,
at Billy."
stop waving at Billy. Show Hector your program.
Were you surprised that his name was Hector?
Yeah, weird. I don't know.
I was
That was
also
odd.
surprised because that is my dad's name, and I was like, "What? You never get." I mean, obviously there is a Hector in the Iliad, but like, you don't. It's not a name. It's not a Joe. It's not a British name
Yeah, it sounds
either.
like a Harold.
Yeah, I
A
was like Hector.
Gregory. I don't know.
Big.
It was just a kind of a average Joe name, and it kind of fits his average Joe appearance, right? Because like I've been saying the whole season, like this guy is a Duke. He kind of looks like he looks a little schlubby. He looks like not as I would expect a Duke to be.
Yeah.
So it kind of fits.
Also during this time we had the press war happening. So I forget the guy's name, but I called him Mr. Met, the fundraiser guy for the Metropolitan. Basically like leaked the news that the Duke was going to be there. But at that point, this was before Bertha went to the hotel to secure the deal, to make sure that he showed up. He was at this point going to the academy. We had different papers saying different things. I thought this was very fun, very like New York, very power of the press type of story.
I like how when Bertha tells the Met guy, like, yeah, but like, just hypothetically, let's just say like the Duke isn't coming to my opera. He's like, well, you better make sure people think he is, because that's gonna be a problem if people think he's not coming here. So you better he got really upset. He was like, he was losing his cool. And then also with that, I love when we're talking about the papers, and Mrs. Astor and McAllister are talking about the papers, and Mrs. Fish comes in. He's like, the Sun says he's coming, and then Mrs. Astor's like, oh yeah, you would read the Sun. She's like, well, how would I find out about the divorces? Mrs. Fish is a low key MVP.
She is.
In any scene that she is in. She steals every scene she's ever in.
She is there for all of it. She's just like, I'm going to be there. I'm going to take it all in. I'm going to go have fun. I'm going to have a party. And
she's shameless and doesn't
throw some shade.
Yeah. She's shameless and she doesn't care who knows it. Like,
yeah,
she's just Mrs. Fish. She's there. She's shady. She's shameless. She don't care.
What did you think of the confrontation between Bertha and McAllister when she summoned him to say like, hey, I know it was you? And he's like, yeah, well, of course, obviously.
It was almost an unmasking, right? Because it's like, oh, Bertha, like, you thought I was your friend? Like, I'm more Miss Astor's friend. You should have known that. But it feels like Mr. McAllister's whole time was hedging his bets on who was going to win. And, once they got the news to the Duke, and the Duke was like, all right. He's like, all right, I've made my choice. It's Mrs. Astor. Like, I kind of sort of backed the play of Bertha here just in case she was able to pull out something crazy. But yep, the victory is Lena Astor's, and I'm going to go on her side. But seems like he picked his side too quickly, and now he's probably going to be on the outs of a lot of things, because by the end of this episode, it seems like Bertha may be our new queen of society at this point.
Well, it turns so. What was really interesting about this whole thing was that this war was fought with social capital. It was whoever was believed the most, whoever could offer more in terms of a standing in society. It wasn't she wasn't offering money. She was offering opportunity and exposure. And the currency of that at this time was apparently at the opera.
Yeah. And we'll talk about Bertha's just master plan later in the episode when it gets revealed, which is probably the most important thing she did in this opera war. But we'll talk about that when we get to it. But just the way that it's all revealed to us and what Bertha's done throughout the season, including this episode, she played this flawlessly in a way by the end of it.
And she navigated around like her possible infidelity with her husband's possible infidelity, rumors, but betrayal, that whole thing. She also was also navigating through Larry's scandal in the papers and all of those things. So she was really able to do things. And I think later in the episode when Larry is walking Marion about, which of course we will talk about.
Yes, of course. hashtag Larry. We should have opened with the hashtag Larry and stuff.
But when they're walking back across the street, he's like, my mom manages. My mom is the manager. And so that is what she's known for. And that's what she does. All right, so let's talk about this opening night. This has been an opening night we knew was coming for, I don't know, many episodes. I think since the second episode when Bertha laid down the line of we will be opening on the same night as the Academy. So this was what everything was building up to. At the Academy, I mean, there's not really much to talk about what was happening at the Academy.
I mean, geez, like it was so in the way they shot it, I almost thought that Bertha had lost for a minute because they cut from Bertha to the empty auditorium, but it was actually, Miss Astor. I was like, oh, okay, woof, shoo.
Yeah, and we had seen, because in season 1, Marion goes to the opera with Aurora and is like waving to what's his name, the fraudster dude, like who's making his way through. Like we had seen the Academy at its full capacity before, and so to see it with like nobody in there, but the people who were there was of course Mrs. Astor, Mr. McAllister, Agnes, the toddler tantrum of Oscar.
Mommy, I don't want to be here. Oscar, you pissed me off enough. You will be quiet and you will sit down and you will be obedient boy. You've been a bad boy. You do what I say. It was like, and we'll talk about all the Oscar and Agnes of it all, but just the whole through line of the episode of just like constant scolding of Oscar. Like she's had an ass full of this guy. He's talking about, oh, it's a bunch of skeletons and ghouls around here. She's like, listen, I have not asked you anything and I don't intend to, so shut your damn mouth. Like Oscar, he was so sassy for someone that just lost his mother's fortune. I would think at that point you just like speak as little as possible because you don't want to be, talked to or about because you shamed your family at this point.
Yeah, it was I felt kind of bad for Oscar because he just was like, I'm really sorry. It's just like, I don't care at all. Like, this is your life now for the rest of time. He was trying to take any responsibility when any opportunity when Mrs. Fish comes in. It's like, oh, nobody's here. I'm gonna leave. And he's like, can I help you get your carriage? Like,
sit down.
What?
Oscar.
So they're all there, and then also like a bunch of old people. It was just, and that was something that Oscar had said as well, is like, look at all these old people, and Agnes is like, but they are the backbone of society, blah blah blah. So really not much happening at the Academy. At the Met, however, we had all of the Russells were there. And did they arrive in fashion, in style? First of all, they came down the stairs at home. What did you think of Bertha and Gladys's departure from their house?
I mean, it was like a fashion show. Miss Bertha comes down first. She's got the green like train, the green like peacock dress. She's like, and everybody's like, oh my gosh. And then she's like, I'm just the opening act. This is the main attraction. And here comes Gladys with the pink or fuchsia or whatever. Could look like Princess Peach from Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
Just this, and it was a glorious type of display for them because it was like, a star-studded extravaganza. And everybody's just like, oh, Gladys. And, I like Larry. What happened to my grubby little sister?
I loved the drama of Bertha's cape and coat, like that we see on full display as she's going up the stairs when she gets to the Met. Like, do not walk around me. You will step on my cape. Yeah. Like, get out of my way.
Give me a wide berth. Like, yeah. I need people to scatter away from me as my dress, comes into your path.
Yeah, like, this is my time. I'm going to take up space. We should also mention that Marion is at the Met because she had been invited by one Larry Russell. And she at this point has told Dashiell like, no, I don't want to get married. But then she's like in this like existential headspace where she's
Yeah.
just like, I have to do things with my life. And this is where I start thinking that maybe they wrote this to be a possible ending for the show, because she was asking such big questions like, Ada's right. I have to do what I can with the short amount of time. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, you are at the opera, lady. Like,
And at this point, they're like Marion's also in a limbo with like Larry, because we're like Larry. This is all part of Larry's plan, I guess. He invited Marion, first of all, and I don't think he even at that point knew that Marion and Dashiell had broken off their
he
engagement.
did
So he's
not.
like,
Yeah.
he's inviting an engaged woman
Making his
to
move.
the opera. I'm like, is that? I feel like that's just not done in society right now. Like you're in. It seems like that'd be one of the things where Dash would come and like take off his glove finger by finger, take it off and like slap Larry across the face with it, like, how dare you shame me and my wife and my betrothed. So that was a move by Larry, which was interesting. But yeah, that was quite a opening salvo. And Larry's like, is this where he's like, I just have to tell you, you're a very marvelous person.
Yes. Yeah. It's just like, it's very kind of you to say so. And he's like, I mean it. And I was like, first of all, obviously, Larry, we have been wanting this for a very long time. But do you feel like the story supported this action by this character? I know the looks and the fandom of it all like really supports this move, but I just was like, where did this come from for Larry?
But listen, Marissa, this is from the same writing team that bought you Ada and Luke getting married after seeing each other 3 times. Okay, so we get it.
That's
stuff
fair.
Stuff moves fast and without notice around here. Okay, so I guess we've been wanting it because we have the complete chemistry here because they just, I don't know what it is. They have this chemistry about them.
They do.
But you're right. The story and the amount of times they've really interacted doesn't really support this for real.
I wonder if the 3rd season is going to be like a bunch of what we missed this season. Like, because if there was stuff there, I would have loved to have seen it. I mean, I know like in the 1st season, we had them running into each other in the street and Larry telling Marion about his wanting to go into architecture. And then later on in the season, we had Marion confessing to Larry about her experience with the guy's name that I forgot, but you know who I'm talking about. Like, like
jerk face Tom.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So like we had all this back and forth between them, and you could see they were starting to forge a relationship between Larry and Marion this season. Larry was like having the time of his life in Newport for the first half of the season, comes back, Marion's getting engaged. I really don't feel like they had a conversation until this conversation. Well, you could argue that like when she brings John over, there's a conversation, but that's like somebody else is there type of thing. So I just wish we got a little bit more. I mean, I'm like happy, but also
all we've really seen are quick check-ins, right, with each other.
Yeah.
Like, oh, hey, what's up with you? Oh, this is what's up with me. Oh, hey.
Like a nod, like, oh yeah, you're here.
And then so that you're right. That is one of my criticisms of this season, is that so many storylines were cut short. We weren't given enough material. They packed too much into the overall story. Like, please get Chef Borden and Mrs. Bruce out of here. Like, what? Why? Yeah. Why? Watson, get them off my screen. What's the point of that? You could have used all of that space to expand other stories.
Yes.
So that's definitely a criticism I'll give the show. Is that they for me they cut things too short. We'll talk about one of the other storylines I felt that happened with later. But yeah, that's something I'd say is that you didn't give the stories enough room to breathe. You didn't make it make sense all the time. So yeah, you're definitely right.
Like another one that didn't make sense was Aurora she's at the Met. Okay, so she's at the Met all season. She's been going back and forth. But then she's got this like, I'm not very brave thing that comes up. And I was like, where is this coming from? And also, why are you scared of Mrs. Astor? Like, never have I gotten a vibe that she was scared of Mrs. Astor. I could see, like, I know she's been like interested and supportive of Marion getting out of like the old ways and stuff like that. But like for her to be like, I'm not brave. And then I was
Listen,
like, why are we going here? Where did this come from?
Aurora Fane is the ultimate like floater. We call it, like, in reality TV parlance, like we
Yeah.
call people floaters that kind of float back and forth with the power, that stay out of the spotlight, that kind of by the end of the reality TV season, she's in the final three, and we're like, how did she get here? Like, what has she done all season? And that is Aurora Fane in a nutshell. Like, she
Yeah.
made the right choice to come to the right place. We don't know why, we don't know how, but she is there after after flip flopping back and forth. Aurora is the ultimate flip flopper. She's put her money in both camps. She shows up at both fundraising things or whatever meetings, so she can make the right choice at the last minute. Is she, just a non-character, or is she the smartest character in the show? Both could be true.
Both could be true.
And listen, we learned Aurora's husband's name. His name is Charles. His name is Charles Fane. Okay, I think this may be the first time we've ever heard Mr. Fane's name used as a first name.
I think we heard it once in season 1, but that was it.
Maybe.
But he didn't even say anything. He didn't even say anything in this episode. He's just
Was
like,
he even there? I can't even like picture him being there. Like, I know Aurora was there, but I can't even see Mr. Fane next to her. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy she was there, but also again, where was the motivation? That type of thing.
Yeah.
Another aspect of the opera war for Bertha was her showdown with the Wintertons, and aka Mrs. Turnerton, who we called her. We do see that the Wintertons get walked to their box, and Mrs. Turnerton thinks she's getting her, she's going to walk into the center box and be the center of attention. And they still have a pretty good box. It's on the first level, but it is not what she was expecting. And she's about to throw this hissy fit. And Mr. Winterton's like, shut it down. Don't even, just act like it's all yours. Don't even give anyone the satisfaction. You have to play this part now.
He has had enough of her. Like, he's like, all right, listen, I tolerate this nonsense. Like, listen, you're hot, you're young, like, that's why I married you, but you're causing me too much trouble at this point. So you just need to calm down, and we'll just sit here. You're just being too much trouble right now.
Yeah, and she goes, I will not forget it. And I was like, okay. Like, what are you going to do? Like, what agency do you have? What resources do you have to topple the praise and awe and award of that Bertha is getting in this moment? Like, because when Bertha walks into that box, everyone looks.
Everyone stands up, applause. She gets a standing ovation.
Yes.
But Mrs. Turnerton has no leverage in the situation. The only thing I could think Mrs. Turnerton could do is, to spread a false scandal about what really happened in George's room that night. But who's really even going to believe Mrs. Turnerton, to be honest with you? So, at this point, she doesn't have a lot of things to really use in her ammo box. She tried earlier in the season, and that failed spectacularly. We are still not sure if the French hair lady at the Russell's house is her doing or not, because we got no movement on that. So who knows? But yeah, I loved Bertha at the one point saying, Mrs. Winterton is seething, and I love it, or something like that.
Yeah, the pleasure
you love to see it. Yeah. So Mrs. Turnerton got what she deserved, I think, in the long.
She did, and we learned a little bit about how she got there in this episode, because George asked Bertha, like, hey, how did Mrs. Winterton get kicked out of the academy? How did that happen? And Bertha's like, I wrote to Mrs. Astor. Of course I did.
Man. And that's what I was talking about, the master stroke that Bertha played some time ago that we didn't even know ourselves.
Right.
Is that she took this calculated risk, right, to get the Wintertons on her side, because she knew by doing this that Miss Astor would kick the Wintertons out, and the Wintertons would bring all the people over to her side. But she did, we talked about the grenade of people finding out that Mrs. Turnerton was Mrs. Russell's former lady maid, whatever you want to call it. And the
Mhm.
way that, just the way that Bertha went about that was just so fantastic. You really got to give it up to her for that.
Yeah, it was so good. Of course, it was an anonymous letter. Then I'm like, who did she get to write it? Did she write with her left hand? How did she do this? Because she doesn't have a Peggy. Like, she doesn't have a secretary. She's the one who's writing all of her letters. She's the one, making all of this correspondence happen. And not saying that like Agnes couldn't, but I mean, I'm assuming because they had corresponded before, Mrs. Russell's handwriting could be recognized.
Well, listen, I'm sure Mrs. Russell could be like, hey, Mrs. Bruce, get over here and write this
Right.
letter.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what I'm thinking.
yeah.
Yeah. Or Adelheid, who wants to stay and, not be demoted.
Poor Adelheid.
Yeah. Okay. We also got to meet for the first time Billy Carlton.
Yeah.
He was there.
I like in the beginning when they're all the little meeting for the Met, and Billy's like, she gets introduced to Billy, and Gladys like, oh, he's just a boy that I dance with. He's nothing. And Billy's like, hey, that's not cool.
Well, and then like Aurora's like, just part of the daily, like,
just part of the grind, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Okay, we have to talk about this. I mean, I know you don't want to talk about it, but this was also very confusing to me. Where did this altruistic, not saying that she can't have a heart and not saying that she doesn't have a heart, but the way that Bertha was like, oh, Mrs. Bruce, you like music? Oh, like, first of all, duh. Second of all, oh, would you like these tickets to the opening night at the Met? Like, where did this come from? And then she's like, brings Chef Borden, and then Chef Borden's like, let me kiss your hand. This was a lot. Let's break it down. What do you got?
We get the budding romance of Borden and Mrs. Bruce coming in from some performance out of the rain, like some crazy kids in love. And we're just like, okay, what? Like, I roll my eyes every time I see them on screen. I'm like, why are you torturing me with this non-story, with this non-thing? And then, like you said, Bertha offers the seat up. I mean, listen, we can't have empty seats. We need seats.
That's fair.
Okay?
That's fair.
So, I think that was part of it, a last minute thing. Let me give it to the poor people. Let me do some charity, for once. So, she gives them the seats. They get there and they're both amazed. Oh my God, this is so great. And then we get the kiss on the hand.
Okay, the setup was Mrs. Bruce was like looking around. She's like, I just want to remember every moment, everything.
He's like, shut your mouth.
And he's like, well, then remember this, and kisses her hand. And I was like, okay.
It's like gas.
Are we done? Are we done
like,
with this now?
On the hand? Oh
on
my
the
God.
Gloved hand, even, Jason. The gloved hand.
Swoon.
Do you think they're getting married? Hand. Do you think like when we come back, they're gonna be like married?
Sure.
Because you know how this happens. It's fast moving.
Yeah, sure. Why not? I guess. And the kiss hierarchy for this show, and I guess this time, is so weird, right? Because you get people that are romantic partners of years and years that kiss each other like on the cheek, and it's like, oh, and then we get the hand kiss, and then we get the real saucy stuff with Larry and later. It's like, oh, I feel like a kiss on the lips in this like time period was just tantamount to like we just banged. Like,
well, especially in public, especially like. Because we do see George and Bertha have quite a little makeout sesh, but that's like behind a door, so nobody can see them in their own home, away from everybody else. So, yeah, you're not going to see much PDA in the 1800s.
But I mean, you would have thought like the way Mrs. Bruce reacted that he had done some other other actor. She's like, oh my gosh, like, what did you think was happening? We're pretty much dating at this point. Like, you had to think that this was. I kind of thought you guys already gone there anyway, but I guess not.
Well, you got caught in the rain, and like in TV world, getting caught in the rain together is like, it's pretty up there.
That's prime make out time.
Yeah. Mrs. Fish does arrive and then like gives Bertha this like official crown compliment of like, you have changed American society tonight. I was like,
you're at the heart of American society. She's like, the Academy was a morgue. Oh my gosh, love Mrs. Fish.
It was great, but I think that like really sealed it for because she was both houses were waiting for the Duke, who was late, to arrive, and they weren't going to start the show. Like, as someone who has done very minimal theater experiences, mainly in orchestra pits, but like the show starts, okay, like
Mm-hmm.
the show starts and the show goes, but they're both opera houses are like, well, maybe he might come, maybe what's going on, and so she didn't really want to like accept that she had won, and Mrs. Fish comes in and tells her this, and this is without the Duke
Yeah.
being there, and then the Duke comes in, so it was like a dub. She won on her own, like George had said, and then the Duke comes in and kind of just supports her win. Yeah. So did you have any doubt?
I did, because I mean, you knew my theory for a lot of the season was that Bertha was going to take a loss here. That I had the vision of an empty auditorium and Bertha and her family just sitting there, and no one else is there. But listen, I'm glad she won. I loved the kind of swelling underscore of Bertha walking into her box and seeing it all full. Like you had the theme song kind of as an underbed. I love that, just that cinematography moment, and that it all kind of worked all well together. So I really enjoyed seeing her in her triumph in that moment. And of course, George backing her up the whole time.
I also loved when she got recognized from the stage and she just like sits there and blows a kiss and waves from the box. Yes. I was like,
yes, I am your queen. I am your queen. Yes. Adore me. Adore me.
As she should. So yes, the Duke arrives and is seated right next to Gladys. And Gladys is like distracted, waving to Billy Carlton. And this is like wild to me. I guess this is the only thing that would happen in the 1800s. But Bertha's like, show the Duke your program.
Yeah.
What?
Gladys, stop waving at the little boy and show this man your program.
Oh, thanks. The opera being performed that night it's called Faust, and I thought it was interesting because like the thesis story, or like the one sentence summary of this, is man sells his soul to gain riches here on earth and lives to regret it. So
foreshadowing.
Yeah, it was a good one for this audience to see. I hope they took home some lessons.
Yeah.
And then at the end, George wonders how the Duke was won after all, and Bertha explains how she wrote the note, but then also she says this great, I loved this line and this delivery. You make the money, and I'm very grateful, but I don't tell you what to do in Pittsburgh, and you must leave me to manage the rest. And I was like, yes, Bertha, this is how you two win at everything.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Like, they are the power couple du jour, right? Yeah. And I just loved how George I think has put it together, because as Bertha is fussing over Duke and Gladys, you see this look of George like, I think we're going to have some issues here, because if we all remember, George did promise Gladys that she could marry someone she loved, and he would not let Bertha kind of run the show of her love life, her affection. So I think that this is going, if we get a season 3, I know you're trying to cancel the show, Marissa.
I am not trying to cancel the show.
But once we get a season 3, we're going to get this kind of I think standoff between George and Bertha about Gladys.
And I think that would be really interesting, because the way that this season, like season 1 was kind of like learn about George, learn about Bertha, like learn about old money, new money. Mm-hmm. This season was learn about them as a couple together.
Yeah. See how they work.
And also how each of them, how they lean on each other to achieve their own success in their own worlds. Like Bertha will attend a dinner and George will buy off a man for an opera box, like these things happen. So if instead of having Bertha's main goal, as it was in season 1 and season 2, being to gain society favor from society, and have to be like in her own house, like the call is coming from inside the house, I think that would be really, really interesting.
does power corrupt in this way?
Yeah.
Because she's possibly going to have all the power here.
Yeah, exactly. Anything else on the opera war before we dive into another one?
Let me call it Mr. McAllister, who was rocking what I could only call like magician chic, like
Right.
like old timey magician, like, with the tails and the big coat and the big old hat. I love that for sure. Let's talk about fashion. That was some style there.
And if anyone could, like, Nathan Lean is the guy to put in that costume. He
100%.
he will sell it.
Could definitely pull it off.
And I will say Marian's dress was like, they do this thing with costume design on the show where they'll mix like traditional with like modern, and I feel like hers was definitely leaning modern, and but it also like worked really well for her. She was in yellow, which is I think the color she was wearing when she first came to New York. So a little callback there. All right. Enough with the opera for now. We'll see. Maybe we'll be back next season. Let's talk about Peggy and what was happening with Peggy. So, as we know in the last episode, they're still trying to save the colored schools of New York. The Board of Education wants to come in and close them down. They kind of have this alliance with Irish educators and Irish families to integrate the schools, build up the population, and have these schools continue. So everyone's still prepping for a board meeting where they can present their evidence and plead their case. And Papa Scott, Gerald, he finds out some news when his board member friend is like, okay, I got to go to the board meeting. And he's like, wait, what? This is supposed to be tomorrow. And I have never seen that man run that fast. I mean, ever, really. But he moved it. He got out of there.
The only time he's run that fast is to give away his daughter's baby.
Oh, Jesus.
That's the only time he's ever run that fast, to get that baby over to his new parents.
Oh, man. Yeah, you're probably right.
First of all, is this how we did medicine back in the day? The guy just showed. I mean, I think that was the fellow pharmacist he was talking about earlier when in the season. Like, hey, I just concocted this thing. Why don't you just go ahead and try it and see how that works for you? Like, this is how we're doing this.
Yep, that was basically it. There's really like there was no government oversight or anything, so it was just like, I guess this will work.
Something in the sink. Why don't you give it a shot?
You know, penicillin was made from mold, so just so.
Yeah.
So anywho, he finds out. He runs over there. He tells everybody they tricked us, which I have to say is not surprising and is sad still, because this still happens. This is still a tactic that will happen when anyone is trying to gain power, but specifically between white and black communities in this time, and then all the way up until like now. So yeah, it's still happening. So, but it's not surprising. So they pick up everything, they head on over, and who's front and center? Papa Scott. Papa Scott again.
Marissa, before we dive deeper into this, I want to kind of rewind a little bit.
What do you got?
We have this meeting of all the black people, right? Getting their stuff together.
Oh yeah.
Peggy enters the scene.
Yes.
We pass by. Let me get myself together. We pass by this woman and a baby. Okay. Innocuous enough, right? Fine. And Mrs. Garnett is her name. Mrs. Garnett's like, oh, hey, did you say hi to Mrs. Fortune and their new baby when you came in? What?
You wanted to see her, Jason. That was like, you wanted to see her.
We didn't even really get to see her. And then they have a new baby. James.
Right?
James.
Right?
You are a dirty dog, James. Dirty dog. And we will talk about my disappointment with this storyline further down the line, because
you could see it. Peggy was like,
excuse me?
Yeah.
Her?
Yeah.
She didn't even know this man had a new baby at home. Like,
no.
Wow. And so, I mean, I think that really just opened her eyes so hard of like, what am I doing with this man here? Like, what is going on?
Yeah, because you would think seeing as they were like bonding over the loss of children, he would
Mm-hmm.
have said, "Oh, hey, great news. You can also have hope in your life because we just had another baby." No, no, that's not what he did. That's not what he did at all.
Mm-mm. He
He's like,
just,
let's just write stories together and make out in a barn. Mm-mm, mm-mm. You are right. Yeah.
yeah, while life is in danger. Um, James, James, J- James. I was rooting for you, James. I was rooting for you. But no, I cannot abide by this.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a rough one. It was rough. And
But yeah,
Peggy deserves
but
so
let's get
much
back. Let's get back
more.
to Papa Scott. Papa Scott
Yeah,
and
no,
his
but
home.
like that's the
She
thing. Like
does.
she
I
deserves so
really,
much more.
she does. And I hope when we get season 3, Marissa,
Yes.
that Peggy will find a true love.
Yes, that is not a career. That is like a person. Because she loves her journalism. But yes, okay. So Papa Scott standing there in front of the Board of Education. I loved how the board was like, "This is quite unorthodox. Like, we cannot have this." They end up pleading their case. And also, very true to form, they get a victory, but it's not a total victory. 2 out of the 3 schools are allowed to remain open, which is enough for Sarah Garnett. She feels pretty good about that. They're able to, move forward. But did you see what Mama Scott had eyes for after that happened? Did you see it?
Listen. It was, we had some touching. We had some like touch on the chest. We had a little cheek stroke
Mm.
later at home. Papa Scott,
Hmm.
he getting it tonight.
Well, and
He
he
getting
like
it.
went up the stairs and then like
And then
looked
watch
back
her leave.
down.
He's like,
Yes.
girl. It's
Yes.
I hate to see you go, but I love to watch you leave, baby. Is that your bodice or is that you? Which is it?
Yeah, so maybe things are better for them based on this
Yeah,
situation.
I think so. I think Papa Scott, came. He came about it honestly, right? I don't think he did this to try and gain favor with Peggy and Mrs. Scott. He wanted to save the schools. He was righteous in his cause. But a great side effect of this is maybe coming back into the hero into his daughter and wife's eyes that he once was. In a
Oh,
way.
I think like his daughter and his wife motivated his actions quite a lot because when he got praise from Sarah Garnett, it's like, you should be praised. He's like, I haven't gotten much praise lately.
I've been so treated terribly by all these people, by my wife and my daughter. Like I've I've missed the glit in their eye when they talk to me. It's all been contempt for the last.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah, you did give away this woman's son, so
Yeah.
you really deserve that. Okay.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
was Peggy, I'd be like, if these schools kept going, my son could have gone here, huh, Daddy? I would never let him forget.
Oh, no. Like, yeah. Yeah, I would know. But she did she did give him a kiss on the cheek when she left. Peggy did.
Well,
So,
listen, Peggy has been very kind of forgiving in a way for her father this whole season. She hasn't really held a grudge against him. So I mean, this and in this moment, she goes to leave. She stops. She's like, "Let me give my dad a kiss on the cheek because he really did come through for us in this moment."
she's the most mature out of everyone
sure.
on
Yeah.
this show. And so much so that she has made a decision to leave the globe. And so she tells Mr. Fortune in the park. And just like that, that's over. And she's going to write a novel, I guess, or finish her novel.
This storyline was really disappointing for me. The way that it ended, it
Yeah.
felt cut off too short. I felt like we should have gotten some more interaction. We should have gotten an actual interaction between Peggy and Mr. and Mrs. Fortune to really kind of drive this home, to really just kind of cut it here. It felt lackluster for me
There
for
was
this
like,
whole storyline.
they never talked about the kiss. Like,
We didn't even find out his POV on it, how he felt
right,
about the
exactly.
kiss, what he was feeling about him and his wife's relationship.
Right.
We only got this from Peggy's side, which feels disappointing. Also, I cannot really focus on anything in that scene because I was focusing on the size of Mr. Fortune's hat the whole time. It was like 5 sizes too big on his head, and it was concerning.
It was concerning.
Why is that so big? What is he hiding under there? Is this a Ratatouille situation? Is there a mouse under there driving him?
Yeah, and then also for it to just end with like bad timing shapes our lives. Peggy deserves so much more. So much more. Justice for Peggy is as always.
And we did get dropped this well, I've been working on a novel. So is this gonna be Peggy's season 3 story? Is she gonna write a novel? Is she gonna write a story about about a fictional story, quote unquote, about the goings on in at 61st Street?
Maybe.
And people are gonna be like, are you gonna write about me in your book? Am I a character in your book? I think that would be a fun storyline for Peggy. But like we've been saying, I do want Peggy to find a real good romantic interest here in this in her life.
She deserves. Also, we didn't get to see her like even tell Marion that this is what she was going to do. Like their friendship wasn't even like showcased.
Wasn't featured here
episode. At all. Yeah. So yes,
it was probably in that episode 9 that we probably should have had.
Probably. Yeah.
It's probably shot. They just for some reason refused to show us episode 9. we know there was an episode 9, but there
has to be, because also, which we'll talk about in a moment, Marion didn't talk to Peggy about her decision either.
No, so weird.
Yeah. So okay, Agnes is in her money. Last we saw Agnes, she had just learned that she has no more money. Mm-hmm. So of course, in the very Agnes way, she brings in a banker or a lawyer, couldn't tell, but one of those people. We're gonna have to move downtown, we're gonna have to sell the house. She throws in a bunch of ethnic stuff, which I am not going to repeat.
Agnes, girl, come on. For the person that accepted Peggy into her house, like lovingly, like what? This, you're talking this way, but I mean, listen, that honestly is true to some people's form, right? It's like, so I liked the realism in it. I feel like it maybe fits the time as well, but I was just like, I probably really could have done without that. I don't think I would have missed anything if they didn't include that.
There's some things when I know that Agnes, the character, is modeled after Maggie Smith's character in Downton Abbey, and it's like a characteristic of Julian Fellowes' writing, like having a woman that will have like snippy comments and things like that. But there are just some times where for Agnes, it comes out of nowhere or there is a little too much. And this was one of those situations where it like took me out of the situation. I can understand like, oh man, we're gonna have to sell the house, or like go like I don't know what to do with only 2 dresses instead of 15. But like having to like say something about another group of people, I could have definitely done without. And sometimes like it's not congruent with who she is some of the time. Also, it could be me projecting Christine Baranski in the situation. I don't like hearing Christine Baranski say these things, and so
that is not the Diane Lockhart.
No.
That's not the Diane Lockhart that I know.
No, it's not the Diane Lockhart of my heart.
But also in this scene where we're talking to the banker and Oscar's just kind of in the corner being sorry. He's like, "Mom, I'm so sorry." The line read from Christine Baranski in this moment, top notch. She's like, "What do I care if you're sorry? You ruined your mother and threw your family in the dark.
You threw away the work of centuries."
Yeah, the modulation in the voice was like, whoo, like she felt the emotion in those lines. It's like that's why she's the queen. Yeah. That's why she's awesome.
Yes. I'm very glad. Like the Broadway peeps brought it, they brought it all. So then they end up telling the household staff, and everyone's like, great, cool. We'll just wait and see what happens. I guess that means I'm gonna get it, except for Armstrong. Armstrong, of course, is already like, I might as well die. I'm already out on the street.
Armstrong, forever the victim is Armstrong.
Yeah. In between all of this, Jack John's patent gets approved.
Yeah, like, and he doesn't want to tell anyone, probably because he doesn't want them begging him for money or jobs when they're all out on the street and he's made tons of money off of his alarm clock. But I kind of get he doesn't want to laud his success in everyone's faces as they're losing their jobs.
Right, but then he ends up telling them, and everyone's so happy. And I was just like, way to go. Way to support your peeps.
He don't really tell him. Bridget kind of snitches on him.
Yeah, that's fair.
You can't tell Bridget anything, apparently, because she will just tell everyone.
Do you think Bridget still has a crush on Jack John?
Who knows? Because they totally dropped that whole subplot. Like, Gilded Age. Like, get your stuff together, man. Come on.
This does open up an opportunity for him to go into business with Larry, though. So that could be picked up in season 3. I would enjoy that.
I loved that interaction. Like, it's not even something that I foresaw, something that I wanted. But when you see Marion, John Jack, and Larry there, and like Larry's like talking to John Jack, I'm like, I never think these two characters would ever really even interact at all. And now, like, this is pretty awesome. You can tell John Jack is like a little uncomfortable being in the presence of this rich person talking rich person business, and he's like, oh my gosh, thank you sir, thank you so much, blah blah blah.
Like, I gotta go serve dinner. Okay, bye.
I gotta go be poor and serve rich people. Bye, rich person.
Well, but that is like what Jack John wanted, right? Like, he wanted this American like success story, and so it'd be cool to see him get it. Agnes does offer to take Armstrong with her. I don't know why we needed this thing. I don't know.
Are we working on some multiple season long redemption arc for Mrs. Armstrong?
I don't know.
I mean, you can keep it, honestly. And
it was all like because of what Peggy said, and like, I don't know if they're like, if anything, seeing Mrs. Armstrong be nice to Peggy would be weird. Without
seeing Mrs. Armstrong be nice to anyone, let alone Peggy, would be weird.
Well, in the middle of all this figuring out what to do with the money, we also have this wedding that has to be paid for. So, of course, Dashiell comes in. It's like, well, what if I pay for the wedding? And at the same time, in the same conversation, he calls Marion Harriet. And both Ada's at first is like, what is you? First of all, we'll talk about her in a minute, but Ada, who is over it, like, she's over the fact that her husband just died.
Luke, who?
Yeah, like, what? Ada is like, oh, did you hear that? And Agnes is like, yes, we all want Marion to be happy. And Marion just forced to sit there and like take it. I could not believe it.
When that happened, I literally was like, oh, like, you want to make sure that Harriet is. I was like, he did not just call her Harriet. He did not just like Freudian slip this and call her Harriet. I said, damn, that's cold. At that point, you cannot blame Marion for what happens next. Like, you gotta cut it at that point. Like, you just call her Harriet. She was already having her doubts, and then this happens.
Yeah, and that came after the fact that Dashiell was like, oh, I don't want you to teach. And I'm like, do you even know this woman? Like, do you know what she wants and who she is and all this stuff? I just want you to have a life of luxury and socializing and all this stuff. And I love that Marion said that would make Aunt Agnes happy, and not like me. And he's not picking up on like any of these clues.
I think Dashiell is just kind of walking through life with no real human thoughts or emotions or feelings. Like, he came to town and Agnes was like, hey, you should marry your cousin. He was like, cool, I'm down.
Well, I think it was like an easy band-aid for grief. I don't think he processed everything, and like, he's just like, like, oh yeah, oh cool, band-aid wife, I'll take a band-aid wife. Make sure that Francis is taken care of. Cool.
And we talk a lot about these relationships in this show not being fully formed or not being real relationships. This is another one of them where we're like, how many times do y'all talk? Like, and it's like Marion is like self-aware in the TV show in the moment. She's like, I don't even really know this dude. We haven't really talked that much, and now we're getting married. Like, what's up with this? I'm becoming a stepmom. Like, how is this happening? So I do applaud Marion for coming to that realization and standing up in her truth and doing what needed to be done. Well,
she says that the reason why she has that awareness is because Ada and Luke loved each other so much.
The love story that everyone should aspire to, Luke and Ada, who we didn't even know Luke's name until the episode before he died. Like, what? Yes, this is a love story that you should aspire to. Now that I think about it, I feel like George and Bertha are the only real relationship
Yes.
in this whole show.
Yes.
Every other relationship is built on nothing. It's all built on lies. It's all built on just nothing at all. We Gilded Age. We need to do better than this. We need to work on some good relationships.
There's enough there. You can go at least like I'm not asking you to go 12 feet deep. You could at least just go a foot. I would take a foot in some of these.
I think that as we keep hammering home, there are issues of A, you're cramming too much story in, and B, you only have 8 episodes to tell it in. So there's not enough real estate to make these relationships feel earned.
Okay, I'm gonna like if there's anyone to blame about this, I'm just gonna say it. David Zaslav. I don't know what the heck he's doing at HBO. He's taking stuff off the network, like The Watchmen, not there anymore. All this stuff. And if he had anything to do with this Gilded Age thing, I will be writing an angry letter. I mean, I should write one anyway, but I was like, this is ridiculous because there is more stuff here. Like, there is, like, we didn't even see Ada grieve. Like, the only reason I knew she was grieving is she was in a black dress.
Yep.
That was it. And but she was like all happy, like do. Oh, I have some mail to read. La di da.
Yo, so okay, listen, y'all. If you're watching / listening to this, you probably watched the episode, so you know what happens at the end.
Right.
When Ada goes, I have so many documents to read, so many letters to open. I was like, here we go. I was right. I was watching this with my wife, and of course my wife does not watch / listen to the podcast on a regular basis because she doesn't listen to anything I do. I was like hitting her with my elbow. I was like, I said this on my podcast. I said this is gonna happen on my podcast. I bet you this is what it is. And it's like, I know what's coming. When she says, I have so many things to read about Luke and his life. I was like, yep. And in those letters, you're getting money. I just know. I was so hyped for what was gonna happen, and it happened.
It did happen. I was happy for you. I was like, but I also like the reveal. We'll talk about in a minute, but the reveal was also really funny.
Yes.
Okay, so Marion tells Dashiell, like, hey, I can't marry you. And Dashiell's like, okay, and goes.
He's like, why? What's the problem?
Like, why? Don't you want to be a wife? And she's like, no, I don't really. I'd like to do some things before that. Anywho,
but let Larry come in here and ask you to marry him.
Like, do some things though. She wants to, do.
She wants to help.
First.
She wants to help the people.
Okay. Yeah, she wants to help the people. And then poor Francis like corners Marion at school. It's like, don't you love me anymore?
What happened? I can just imagine the scene before this of like Marion teaching painting, and she looks over at Francis's, painting, and just like Marion,
her.
like Marion getting run over by a horse and carriage. Like, what are you painting, Francis? I'm painting you getting run over. Like, I want you to die for dumping my daddy. Francis just looks like a demonic child. Let me just say.
Well, okay, she watch Station 11. She has a lot. That actress has a lot more in her, and the fact that she was just in this like diminutive role was like very heartbreaking for me. Having watched Station 11, I was like, oh, give her something more than just like, why won't you marry my dad? Yeah. So Marion basically says, also, this is weird and freaky as well. I want to know you for the rest of my life and dance happily at your wedding. I guess they're cousins, but like, teacher, say that out of school. Like, don't say that in school.
It's like, I want to dance at your wedding, not dance with your father, but dance with someone else that I bring, probably Larry Russell, to be honest with you, because we got a thing going on.
We got a thing.
Just shares too much. But just to backtrack a second with the whole telling Dashiell, and the way Dashiell like approaches this, as Marion tells him, like, I don't think you're over your dead wife. He's like, yeah, but I mean, I just kind of got to move on, right? Like, I still love my dead wife. I can't imagine, like, but I have to have a wife, right? Like, that's just the thing to do. Like, he's so lost in the sauce, really.
Yeah, and that, I mean, that is something that I personally have felt a lot in my life. Is like, I just have to, like, you go to school, you graduate, you get the job, you get married, and none of those, I mean, like, I graduated, but like none of those things after that has happened in my life. And when it doesn't happen, and it can feel real crappy. So like the fear of not doing that first, like, I can understand why people would settle in the situation to just check the box of like, okay, I did this. And apparently this is a tale as old as time, because if Dashiell's feeling it in the 1830s or 1880s, like we've been feeling it forever. But yes, he was definitely motivated again by status, and he's definitely an old money person, and Marion is much more of a new money person.
Yeah.
And I did like that Agnes did not get mad at her for
I love that
her decision, but she did warn her and said, you have 2 strikes against you. The second one is more public than the first, because everybody knew you were going to get engaged. First one was Mr. Rakes. Second one is this engagement. And then she says, don't throw your life away. And this is what sends her into this existential crisis at the opera of like wanting to ask the big questions, do all this stuff.
Will my life ever amount to anything? But it's like, I also kind of loved Agnes's perspective here, because from what Agnes had gone through, I'm almost surprised that she takes the stance all the time of, you must marry money, knowing what she went through with her husband.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is also a thing of like, don't throw your life away, marry someone that you love, because like I didn't.
Do you feel like this was a change because her situation changed? Like, she doesn't have the pressure of like trying to protect this money anymore, and is like, you now have the freedom to marry for love, because I didn't.
I'm almost more surprised at that point in the story that she wasn't mad, that she wasn't like, no, because we talked the last episode about maybe Dashiell being the hope for the family of money. So I was a little surprised that Agnes was this, cool with it, because if, even if Dashiell doesn't fund Agnes and Ada, he could fund Marion. I would think Agnes would be like, hey, you got to like,
take care of you.
This is your opportunity here to be in the money. So you should have taken it. But for her to put her, niece's, or what is it? Yeah, her niece's best wishes above everything else was really kind of more of that, showing the thing underneath Agnes's surface, where she has that humanity, notwithstanding some things she said earlier in this episode. But so I did think that was a very interesting way to take that particular situation.
Yeah, some growth from her, at least we saw. Also, could have been a little bit of a fast forward of a plot. Again, having my suspicions. It would have been great to see them work through that or have a larger conversation, other than just like, yeah, I'm fine with it. Bye. All right, let's talk about this Larry and Marion morning. I
kind of want to see what it was like in the Russell household after the opera, because they're there until the morning time. Like, when did they get out of the opera? What did they do when they got to the Russell's house? Or they just like, when you come home from like a show or a late night, you're just all standing around the kitchen island, like eating pizza or something? Like, is that what was happening? Like, I wanted to see the scene there.
Yeah, remember when she had like that supper in the first season, and it was like all this food and like lobsters and stuff, and nobody showed up, so she had to donate the food. I was like, is the spread like that? Like, did she have like everything under the sun?
She did mention to Mrs. Bruce about the menu for the night.
Right.
That was going to be something cold or whatever. So I don't know what, that could have given us some insight, but I just would have enjoyed seeing what that was like. Did everybody like loosen all their clothes? Like,
yeah,
that was such a long night. Like, yeah,
that would have been fun,
since they were there all night, apparently.
Yes. And so Larry walks Marion across the street in the morning. And this is when we find out that like Marion told Larry that she's not engaged. Again, a conversation would have loved to have seen. But it's like, does that mean like you're staying in New York? She's like, I hope so. We will never say goodbye. We'll be friends forever. And I was like, forever? You talk to each other like 2 times. Like 2 times this entire season. How are you friends forever? And then he just goes in for first of all, the kiss was good. I mean, like it was hot. It was good. It was good.
We don't see a lot of mouth kisses on this show, but when we get them, we get them. You know what I mean?
And I loved Marion's reaction of like, oh, like you could tell that was a different Like,
she's now looking at Larry with different eyes.
yeah.
Being like,
Oh,
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 okay,
friends. Did I
Larry.
say friends?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like Larry, like, so this made me look back on the whole season of being like, yeah, Larry has kind of looked at Marion this whole season with these eyes of like,
he
she's
has.
gonna be mine. The girl is gonna be mine. But thinking back on it, I just think Marion has been a little oblivious to the
He
chemistry and
has.
hasn't really thought about it that way. So this was kind of her seeing that chemistry. Now, I don't know if men should be just running over and kissing women just without any provocation. That's another story. But
Yeah.
it just helps Marion open her eyes. Be like, oh, okay, all right, Larry, I see you. I see you.
Well, yeah, and I think it would be interesting for that to continue. I do kind of like that it was a surprise to Marion, but also I would have liked to have gotten something more than looks from Larry throughout the season, like them having another conversation or him having a conversation about Marion outside of that. But I'll take what we can get. I was okay with that. Yeah, I just hope there's more. Like,
I do like right after John Jack is like,
yeah.
"Hey y'all, I was watching from the other side of the door. That was pretty hot. By the way, Ada and Agnes are waiting for you."
Yes. Okay. So they have waited up all morning for
Mhm.
for Marion to come home because Ada has something to tell them. And like Agnes didn't even like change into a nightgown or anything. They're all still like formally dressed. And then Ada drops it and is like, hey, by the way, Luke's dad made a ton of money in textiles and now it's mine. And so nothing will change. And it'll be fine.
I mean, listen, we knew something was going to happen to kind of make everything okay again.
It's true.
We prophesized that. I prophesized Luke Fortune.
Yes.
Just the way it was revealed by Ada was just like, you could tell she almost had like this shit-eating grin on her face. Is like, I know something you don't know.
Yeah.
I gotta tell y'all something. This is juicy.
I love that she said it's too much money actually.
Actually, like an obscene amount of money. Like F you money. Like you just don't know what to do with money. Way more money than you had, Agnes. I mean, not to say anything, but it's a fortune.
Yes, and that turns even though like they don't have to move, even though like they don't have to sell their clothes or anything like that, things have changed on 61st Street the moment Bannister finds out who's paying the bills.
Yo, this was ultimate shade from Bannister. Okay, this was just top level, like, because he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to do that. He's like,
He didn't have to, but
like,
he
Miss
did.
Ada, is that cool with you? Because you the boss now. You the one in charge at this point. And I love just Marion's just like, she's like, yeah, Aunt Agnes, isn't that funny? Because the staff is now gonna be answering to Ada, like just the grin on her face, and she's like, how you feel about that, Agnes? Huh?
And I also like Ada's response of, I guess some things might be different.
Just a crazy psycho grin on her face, like, oh yeah, see you later, Miss Armstrong. I would not be surprised if the next day Miss Armstrong's out on her ass, because we know how Ada feels about Miss Armstrong.
That's true. That's true.
But I guess Agnes would probably try to appeal for Miss Armstrong for whatever reason. But I just to drop this in here.
Yeah.
Like, as everyone's like, oh my God, everything's great. Nothing's going to change. Like, I almost expected someone to be like, thank God Luke died, right? Like, just like no talk of that at all.
He died like yesterday.
My God, isn't it so fortunate that Luke's dead now and we now have all his money? Like, and
how did he have time to change all the papers?
Who knows? Because this all their wedding, their marriage took place over, I swear, 3 days. I would swear that the wedding, the diagnosis, the death, all took 3 days. That's how this made you feel. But just to look back on how we got here, it almost feels like they reverse engineered this, right? Like, we want to take away Agnes's money, and then by the end of the season, we have to figure out how to get it back. How could we have like Ada in charge? Oh, I know. We'll have her marry someone that has money. How do we do that? Oh, let's introduce this Luke guy. It almost makes it feel like Luke was just a means to an end, and it didn't really
Yep.
mean much of anything.
Yeah. Even
Like, will we
though,
hear the words Luke Forte next season at all?
oh yes, because Marianne is gonna make sure she gets her Luke Forte.
Yeah.
You know?
You and Uncle Luke.
Yeah.
You call him Uncle? Like,
Uncle Luke.
you
right
barely knew the
away.
man.
She knew him probably for a day.
Yeah, for real.
So that's where we leave it. We've got Bertha on top of society. We've got Agnes with money that's not hers. We've got Marion and Larry with some vibes. Peggy is going to write a novel, and everyone else. Oh, yeah. I had some questions about some other characters.
Some odds and ends.
Yeah. What was up with the French lady? Like, we see the French lady, like, there's like a conversation. First, all we see is her hiring, like her getting her interview, and then there's like a conversation between Mrs. Bruce and Bertha of like, she's doing okay, you want her to stay on, okay, cool, and then she's downstairs. What is this?
And she's sitting like in the kitchen with the rest of the staff.
Yeah.
Like, I thought you were the hair lady. Why are you in the kitchen? Why are you like bussing tables or whatever you're doing? Like, she had a dishcloth in her hand. I was like, what are you even doing down here? You do hair. Like,
yeah.
like they introduced this woman and did nothing with her.
Nothing, which makes me believe there has to be a vault of something somewhere.
There's an episode 9 we're missing. I'm telling you.
Something.
I swear they said 9 episodes second season, and now they made us think. No, it was always 8. There's an episode 9 somewhere.
I'm on to you, Zaslav. I'm on to you.
We're gonna break into HBO headquarters and get the lost episode. Because this was free trial, lady. Like, hey, I'll stay on for a week, and if you don't like it, you can fire me. If you like it, you can hire me. Whatever. And is this a bomb waiting to be let off in season 3? Who knows? Because nothing really came of it.
Is she not really French also?
Yeah. Is she Mr. Borden's long lost sister or something?
Yeah, I don't know. And then also all this time we spent with Watson and his daughter and doing all this stuff, and they just like throw it away in a I'm leaving.
Yeah, I'll miss you guys. What? Mr. Watson could have been totally erased from this show, and I would not mind. I would not care.
Well, and then they were like, "Oh, so you're around, Mr. Watson?" And Church is like, "Nope, you won't. You're not going to see him.
He's never going back here again. He's not allowed back here by decree of his son-in-law or whatever. So we will never see this man again."
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that could be an interesting season 3 plot if the McNeils come over to the Russell house and Mr. Watson's there, I guess. But will you ever think about Mr. Watson again in season 3 if we never see him? Well, in season 3 when we're covering the show, because there will definitely be a season 3, Marissa. When we're covering the show in season 3, we'll be like, hey, you remember Mr. Watson? What's that crazy cat up to? I don't think we will. I think we will forget all about Mr. Watson by the time the show picks back up.
It was, and just in season 1, he was a weird stalker. In season 2, we got a little bit more, and then he's out. Like, I don't understand. I'm very puzzled about that. But yeah, he could have been erased from the whole thing. Do we think Larry is gonna go back to architecture?
Who knows? Because he totally dropped it. Larry, who had this dream of being an architect, gets dumped by his older cougar lady friend, and I guess the love of architecture went with it. I guess because we never heard of it again.
Right. I know, which was disappointing because it was him breaking away from his family. It was like his break. Yeah. But I guess he's going to be like a clock millionaire or something.
Is he going to help design clocks with John Jack? Is that his new
I guess. Well, before we end the podcast, do you have any favorite storylines, least favorite storylines that you want to call out?
Favorite storylines, pretty much anything having to do with Bertha. Bertha and George killed this season. They carried the load for this season with the strike stuff with George. I thought was very intriguing and very interesting, and showed how cunning George is. Same thing with Bertha. The Opera War storyline started to lag for me a little bit in the middle, but it really hit strong in the end. So I'll say that those are my favorite storylines of the season.
Yeah, I'll have to in every aspect. Like the actors stole the show, the story stole the show. They were really like the anchor for the season. And I really enjoyed being able to root for a couple and not have to, think that one was trying to play against another. And I really hope that, we will see them in season 3, but they will be probably mad at each other for a little bit, and I'm going to have to be okay with it.
For sure.
Anything else? Anything else that you want to mention that we haven't talked about?
Boy, the whole Peggy Fortune stuff was really disappointing to end up with, because I was really writing the story in my head of like, Peggy and Mr. Fortune maybe going to sneak around behind Mrs. Fortune's bag. Mrs. Fortune going to have some kind of interaction with Peggy, and they really just kind of dropped the whole thing. Just thinking of weird storyline. The Luke Ada thing was really odd and weird. Kind of just out of left field for stuff. Overall for this season, I would say I enjoyed the season. I would say it's a good season. It just has some pitfalls, some potholes, if you will.
It's like a clock that has too many gears.
It's like a clock that gets stuck. We need John Jack to come in here and get that escapement, whatever doohickey thing fixed, so this thing can run better, I guess.
I agree with you. I think it was a really good season. Like, it was a good season of TV, but there was like a lot you could have taken away and a lot you could have given us more of, and it would have been an even better season of TV, and that would have been great as well.
Yeah, I think that was the answer, is to cut some of the fat and expand on the storylines that were interesting, but we wanted more of.
Yeah. Well, we'll see you back here for season 3. I do just want to thank Jason. Thank you for coming on this adventure with me. I know, you had no idea what the show was before podcasting, and it's been really, really fun podcasting with you this season, and hopefully in season 3 as well. And also, just thanks to everyone who listened and learned along with us. It was fun to look things up and kind of share things with the audience in that way. So I hope everyone, enjoyed that part as well. It's not like The Crown. Like, I'm not like Wikipediaing every single thing, but it was fun to kind of learn about different parts of American history. And I think the show did a good job telling at least about the Brooklyn Bridge. I learned a lot about the Brooklyn Bridge, which I didn't know before.
And it told some stories about some unsung heroes that we had never heard. I know I had never heard of before. So it was interesting learning that, mostly about women that are these unsung heroes of American society and culture back in the day. So love that. Thank you, Marissa, for persuading me to do this show. I will say, when you came into my inbox and was like, "Hey, Gilded Age," I was like, "Who? What?" And then I looked it up. I was like, "Ooh, this is not in my wheelhouse," but I do love working with podcasting with Marissa, talking to Marissa. So you know what? Let me step out of my comfort zone. And I'm so glad I did, because I found a show that I really enjoy. Aww. And of course, it was a blast talking to you throughout these 8 episodes. As we like to do, we always have a fun time whenever we podcast about a show. Whether the show is good or bad, we have a fun time. So I was like, I know for whatever the show is going to be, I'm going to have a fun time talking about it. So thank you so much for thinking of me, first of all, for this podcast, and coming to me with it, and making sure that I knew, listen, we can have a fun time. So I could do the right thing and come on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm so glad you did.
And listen, to all those out there listening, watching, whatever it may be, send us out with a bang, right? Give us some of those Apple reviews. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up. Let us know you enjoyed this podcast, the whole season, whatever it may be. We enjoy hearing feedback. We enjoy hearing your takes on things. So if you want to comment on the YouTube video, hit the thumbs up, leave us an Apple review. All those stuff really helps us know you're enjoying it, and helps our higher ups know that you enjoyed listening to what we had to say.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, it helps a lot. So please engage in that way. We would love it. All right. You know where to find us. I think I've said it enough times. So I think we're just gonna leave it. Or leave it at that. And so for the last time until season 3.
Because there better be a season 3, Sazloff.
Yeah.
Well, make us come find you.
Good day, Mr. Reed.
Good day, Miss Garza.